yous. First out to our Career Advancement Center team, and a personal thank you in alphabetical order to Ms. Holmes, Ms. Martucci, Ms. Rayner, and Ms. Thomas. And Ms. Thomas is in the driver's seat today. We are recording this session, so I want to make you aware of that. Ms. Akande, who works in our GRSS team, she is our CPA go-to relative to guiding students for preparation and sitting for the exam. She was unable to join us today, but I just want to put her name out for you. And then Ms. Rivers, who is our Mtacs recruiter, she should be on the call today as well, but she may be joining a little bit later. And then the plan today is that we're going to have somewhat of a guided discussion with our panelists. If you have a question during that portion of the presentation, please use the chat box to post any questions that you have. And then once I get through the content that I plan to cover, which is essentially in two veins, tax profession, and then for students as a student and CPA preparation. Then we'll open it up for Q&A, and at that juncture, you can raise your hand using the icon, or you can unmute yourself to ask a verbal question. And if you're shy, of course, you can still continue to use the chat box. That'll be fine. And so right now, what I'd like to do is have our panelists unmute themselves and just a very brief intro, your name, the company that you work for, and your role at that organization, because we've had at least one person who's transitioned since we announced the panelist. And this is not an alphabetical order at all, so I just jotted down the names of our participants. So I'll call on you, and if you would please do that. And then as a courtesy, if you aren't speaking, if you'd please mute your microphone. Okay, so first, Mark Sporn.
Hi everyone, my name is Mark Sporn. I am a graduate of the Georgia State Accounting and Finance undergrad program and the Mtacs, and I am at Williams, Benader and Libby as a senior tax accountant.
Great, thank you. Rachel.
Hi everybody, I'm Rachel. I graduated undergrad at Georgia State, and I also did the Mtacs at Georgia State. Right now I'm a senior tax accountant at MS Tiller.
Thank you. Rashida.
Hi, I'm Rashida Lukeman. I'm also undergrad and Mtacs graduate of Georgia State. I am the senior tax manager and manager of diversity, equity, and inclusion at Fraser and Dieter.
Thank you. Michael.
Hi, everybody. Michael Campbell at Crow LLP. We're the 8th largest accounting firm in the world. I am a senior manager in the Global Tax Services Group. Got my undergrad at Georgia Tech and then my master's of tax at Georgia State back in 2012.
Thank you. Justin.
Hello, Justin Goldblatt, Master of Tax from Georgia State, and I'm currently a Senior Associate at Pathstone.
Thank you. Kim.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kim Hagler, and also graduated from Georgia State for my undergraduate degree and got my MTAC at Georgia State. And currently I work for UPS as a tax accounting supervisor, and I also teach for Georgia State at another university, undergraduate accounting and tax classes.
Thank you. Jeremy.
Hey everybody, my name is Jeremy Stewart. I work at Kpmg. I'm a senior tax associate, and I did my undergrad and MTACs at GSU and finished up in 2018.
Great, thank you. Miyoko.
Hi everyone, my name is Mia Boheimann. I'm a graduate of Mtacs program at GSU. I graduated in May last year. And I'm currently working at UPS as a state and local tax supervisor.
Great, thank you. And then Ari.
Hi everyone, my name is Ari Leibowitz. I went to Georgia State undergrad 2018, and I graduated my MTACs in 2019. I'm at Deloitte in Atlanta and within the international tax practice.
Thank you very much. And I think I got all the panelists. If I overlooked anyone, please let me know. But I think that was the 10.
Lynn, I don't think I got that.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brenton. And I do have your name. I skipped over it. My apologies.
All right. My name is Brenton Ferris. I'm a senior tax associate at Smith & Howard. I did my undergrad at University of Colorado Boulder and did my Mtacs at Georgia State.
Great. Thank you. Again, my apologies. Okay, so we'll go ahead then and get started with some of the planned content. Again, if our participants, which we have both undergraduate students, current graduate students, and at least 8 of our newly admitted Mtacs students. So thank you all for being here. And the first portion of the discussion will relate to the tax profession. So for our panelists, and we'll take volunteers, we don't have to hear from everyone because we won't have time, but at least 2 or 3 people to speak to the following. So how did you know that tax was for you? So how did you know that was going to be your vocation?
I'm happy to speak to it. So in my undergrad, I was taking my tax class and just happened to really like it. And it just so happened that my audit class I wasn't as into, but I did the Deloitte Tax Competition, which I don't know if it's still a thing. I know it was for many years, and really got introduced to it. It's a very difficult tax problem, and you have a couple undergraduate students and a graduate student. And I had really no idea what I was doing, but I got thrown into it, and just the research and just the problem solving of it was fantastic. And it really opened my eyes to the tax field, and I haven't looked back since.
Great. Anybody else?
Yes, I'll go. So I was a sales and use tax auditor for the Georgia Department of Revenue, just because, it was a good, steady job. And I did not like the feeling of being the bad guy and, telling people that they owed money and assessing them. So I went to the career fair at Georgia State and met someone at Frazier and Dieter who was a tax partner, and thought I'd try it out, and realized that I just really liked tax, and I did not want to travel anymore as an auditor. So the not having to travel made me lean more towards tax than audit.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rashida. And maybe one more person that would like to speak to that.
I can go. My experience happened at first in undergrad. It was primarily due to how my first tax class, the professor at the time, I can't remember his name now. Oh my gosh.
Ben.
Thank you. He just had a way with words, and I'm sure many would know. And he made a story, and it just really intrigued me. And I just started to inquire more. And I had a few internships, and I think what solidified it was more so the people. I wasn't so focused on, what kind of tax I was doing or whatever. It was more so, okay, do I vibe with the people and the culture? And that's, I think, honestly, you're going to find in the start of your career for many is the most important.
Oh, sorry, I had muted myself. We have some yard maintenance going on outside, so I'm trying to keep that down. Perfect. Thank you so much, Ari. And then maybe if we could have 2 or 3 people speak to the following question. So many of you are in specialization areas. So could you describe your path to that area of specialty?
I can go. I always knew, from undergrad that I wanted to do something in international business. It's what brought me into tax, was that there was, the ability to do international tax. But when I came out of school, I didn't want to jump right into that specialization. So I actually started at Smith & Howard, and did general tax, like federal, state, and just had a focus on international. And then after a few years of, learning about tax, I decided it's time to specialize. So I moved to Crow who had an international tax team and joined on there. And it was an interesting time because it's like, if you start off in a specialization, you know, you're going to be leagues ahead of somebody who's switching 4 years down the road or 5 years down the road. But looking back, I think, you know, I wouldn't change the way I did it because now I have an understanding of, you know, all sorts of tax.
Yeah, I think that's great advice to do the generalization and then maybe try to pick from that what your preference is. So a couple of other people maybe that we have not heard from yet.
Hey,
Hello.
go ahead.
Go ahead. Kim, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Miyako. Hey, so I got kind of lucky and went the opposite route. When I got my internship at UPS, it happened to be on the team that was becoming the combined tax accounting and reporting team at UPS. It used to be separate. The provision process was separate from compliance. So, but the two teams came together when I got hired, and tax accounting at the same time I was finishing my Mtacs was the area that I enjoyed the most. And that's mostly because I have 20 years of book accounting experience. So, you know, debits and credits make sense to me. Looking at the balance sheet and the income statement all makes sense to me from the beginning. And I found tax accounting for income taxes to be a lot of fun. So I got lucky in my position to where I was just put right away into what I felt like I wanted to be doing for, you know, the rest of my career. So it was just a good fit for me.
Okay, Miyoko, if you want to go now.
Sure. Since I'm the only one state and local tax specialized person here, so I just wanted to share my experience. So I started my tax career at Kpmg, and I worked for Kpmg 5 years. In first 2 years, I did the federal tax returns, and I enjoyed it. And then I always curious that, okay, so federal tax is done, but after that, it's always states comes after. And I kind of got interested in state and local tax area. And then I got transferred to the SOLT practice within Kpmg. And as I started doing the state and local tax, and I realized that of course, you need to know the federal tax side because it's all related. And also every state and all small localities are so different. Everything is different. So it just makes me more curious about like how each state administer taxes, and it just never get bored. And that's how I got into my specialized state and local tax area.
Great, thank you. So this next question, Rachel, I'll just give you a heads up because I know you've got a great story about this. So Rachel and maybe one other person that either participated in summer leadership programs for an accounting firm and or an internship, and how that influenced your full-time hire decision.
Okay, so I did a summer leadership program, and following that summer leadership program, I did an internship with the same company. I also did another internship with another company. One of them was larger than the other, and I think that's a really good way to figure out kind of where you want to go in your career at first. If you want the large firm feel, if you want the smaller firm feel, you know, everybody's different. And I think doing more than one internship really helped me make the decision of kind of where I was on that spectrum. The leadership program, I feel like really helped me kind of network with the company and figure out if I even wanted to do an internship with them. And also it kind of helped me grow. I know they do a lot of, you know, resume workshop and stuff like that, and that was super helpful. So I just feel like the leadership program was a really good introduction into the accounting field because that was really where I started. So that was a really good introduction. And then, like I said, it led into my internship. So I think if you can do one, that would be super beneficial.
Great, thank you. And so as Rachel mentioned, if you have an opportunity to do more than one internship, particularly if they are different size organizations, then that is going to help you figure out firm culture, which I think Ari spoke to earlier, because you want to make sure you have a good fit. That's what I always tell students. You know, it doesn't really matter where you place. What is most important is fit, and that has to do with the culture of the firm. So make sure that you start networking as soon as possible and get to know people and know more about that firm culture. Okay, so maybe one other person about internships or
I could speak to mine. I had a few. I started my first internship. I actually did a summer leadership program at Grant Thornton, and it was like Rachel said, a big, a couple day networking event, and you got to meet everyone, and that turned into an internship offer. I went through that. So I was intern at Grant Thornton, and then I Deloitte at a later date. And I think it was really great because then I got to see, okay, what is like the mid-tier versus the big four. I ultimately went with Deloitte not because it was big four necessarily, but I genuinely and sincerely got along with the people better at Deloitte. And I wasn't really focused on, like I said earlier, like what I was going to be doing exactly. They give you preference. They'll say like, hey, rank what you're interested in the most. As far as Deloitte goes, I'm not sure about the other ones, but I just fell into international tax. But then the intern class that I was with, specifically in international tax, we had a really good experience together. We got to go to Deloitte University and hang out all together, and kick back and really connect. And it was definitely the number one reason why I went back. So it's a big emphasis on the people, because you're going to be talking with these people probably more than your family, in my case at least. But yeah, it's very important. So, and if you have any opportunities to get your feet wet and do an internship, it's like really great, because you get paid for it. It's great experience, but it's not like a set, commitment where it's like you're locked and loaded. So.
Great, thank you. So we're going to transition to another question, and I think at least Jeremy has experience in this one. So Georgia State has multiple Panthers immersion programs. And so this is an intensive interview process and selection for students to participate in these programs. And the one that is most closely aligned to tax and accounting is our Panthers in the District program. So Jeremy, if you can speak to that, and if anyone else on the panel participated in one of these, we'll hear from one other person after Jeremy. Thank you.
Hey, so I got to do the Panthers in the District, the very first one, and that was it was great. I mean, what I really liked about it, and what I think I really benefit from the whole process, was just, in addition to everything else that the Robinson School of Business does, is like resume prep. I believe it was like the cocktail, like practice run-throughs, some of the research we did for companies, which helped me, kind of be able to place where I'm at now. Or then I came from PwC and switched to Kpmg last year, but they helped me with that process too. So, but the whole trip and everything was really nice too. That was my first time going to DC, and yeah, I think it was really beneficial, mainly, getting to go through the whole process, meeting people that I still kind of keep in touch with today, and just really with the whole professional aspect of continuing to get better with some of the stuff you have to, work on. So, yeah.
Great, thank you, Jeremy. Anybody else on the panel that participated in an immersion program? Okay, so Jeremy, you may be our solo on that one. Okay, so now let's continue to talk about the profession. Again, maybe just a couple of people on the panel, and perhaps someone we haven't heard from yet. And so what has been the hardest thing for you to navigate so far in your professional career?
I can go on this one. I think I didn't have an internship when I started in public accounting before I got hired full time. And I'd come from doing other finance internships and did the Mtacs program, which is extremely helpful. But I came in like expecting to know, or like thinking that I need to know everything, and like I put a bunch of stress on myself. But you have the right firm, you have the right people around you. You're exposed to a lot. I'm exposed to a lot specifically. I'm not very specialized. I wasn't, and getting more, but you will learn a lot, and it's just it's a never-ending process, learning new stuff every day.
Great, thank you. Anybody else want to share?
I can
So I
share.
was in the, oh, I can go ahead, but
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
okay. Just wanted to speak since I haven't answered any of the questions yet, just so I can contribute here. But so I initially started off at Deloitte after doing the Master's of Tax at Georgia State. While I was in the program, I really focused on the CPA exam as opposed to having extra time to do any internships. So while that was great and a tremendous plan that worked out very nicely on the CPA side of it, I didn't have internship experience. So coming into Deloitte without internship experience set me back a little bit initially, because everybody all your peers already kind of have a network within the firm, and they know kind of how the organization works. So great people at Deloitte, really enjoyed the experience and got up to speed on everything. But I definitely would say that having some different internship experiences can definitely help in that regard. So.
Okay, great, thank you. And then Rachel, do you want to briefly interject, because you were anxious there? Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is really important. This field is super demanding, and trying to find time for yourself can be very difficult. And I noticed this very early on when I was still in school. I graduated undergrad, did a couple internships, went immediately into the tax program, started doing my CPA at the same time. And I didn't have time for myself. And I think that I would have been in a better headspace if I would have at least just taken 1 hour out of my day to make time for myself. And I'm still learning that. I've definitely gotten better at it, but when you're, so passionate and just a perfectionist, it makes things very difficult. So I really recommend to find some time for yourself, even if it's an hour. Just doing something that genuinely makes you happy outside of this profession is, in my opinion, so important.
Great, thank you for sharing that. And I'll just say that that's always been a lifelong struggle for me. So I'm very much late stage in my career, and have worked in high stress jobs, Big Four public accounting, Fortune 500 financial services before I transitioned to higher ed. And even now I still have that work ethic where I usually work a minimum of 60 hours a week. It's just habit. And so, yeah, I still have trouble finding time for myself, but I need to learn to do a better job of that. So that's great advice. Thank you. Okay. So now I have a question that I think is super important in general, but extremely important relative to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So Rashida, I'm going to cue you up relative to this, and then maybe we'll hear from one other panelist. But from your perception, how important is it to have a mentor, and not only a mentor, but an advocate? Because those are different things.
Yes, I think especially for me, I have 3 children. I am the crazy mom who gets t-shirts at the soccer game, so I don't want to miss anything. And then couple that with me coming from the government, which is like you're 9 to 4 and you're out, and there's no additional work outside of those hours. My biggest concern was me having a family life and maybe not being able to work on Saturdays like everyone else. How is that going to impact my career? And even as an intern, I was kind of leaving at 4:30, sometime during busy season for daycare, but that was because I had a couple of women. One is a partner who had triplets and made it 2 partners. I'm like, okay, clearly, you know, that's not something that's frowned upon. But she was there for me and was kind of like, no, it's okay for you to pick up your kids. It's not gonna impact your progress here. Just make sure you communicate. And then even having her during performance evaluations. And I had a few advocates who, one, helped guide me and let me know that things were okay. And then kind of helped give me the tools to make sure that, okay, if you're not going to be the typical accountant that works from in the office, you know, on a, you know, until 8 o'clock at night during busy season, these are the things that you need to do. And then I'll make sure that I have the support and that the partner group and people that you don't work with understand that there is a reason why you're leaving, and you're not penalized and you're making up for it in other ways. So I definitely think that's one of the biggest advice I would give to anyone is make sure you have a connection with people in leadership to kind of help mentor you and kind of give you the tools you need and kind of be your voice in those rooms when you're not there.
Great, thank you. And maybe one other panelist that might want to speak to that.
I'll take it. I would just say that having a mentor is priceless. In the Mtacs program, I knew already that I wanted to teach part-time, and so I unofficially dubbed Lucia Smeal my mentor for getting down that path. And you know, she was so helpful, has been so helpful in opening up opportunities for me in that area. And so I think that mentors are priceless for that. I also have one at UPS. So we have a formal program, and I look to start mentoring somebody else soon. So I think that if you see somebody that is in a role that you want, you know, that's the kind of person you need to go to ask to help guide you. You know, how do you get there from where you're at?
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, so the primary difference between a mentor and an advocate is that the advocate will actually go to the table for you and say, hey, this individual is doing stellar work. I think she or he should be given consideration to move to a different project or to move up in the organization, so on and so forth. And I know I had one of those when I was in corporate. And she was very, very instrumental in my career trajectory at that particular organization. So, you know, whether it's a formal or an informal program, it does not matter. So make sure that you're inquiring about mentoring and advocacy as you're seeking out employment opportunities. Okay, so I think we'll transition. I'm monitoring the time. So we're going to take about probably 7 to 10 more minutes with the panel discussion, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So I don't see anything in the chat box yet, so everybody's been quiet so far. But I think this next series of discussion that we may get some activity from our participants. So for any panelist, again, preference to hear from 2 or 3 folks. What are your recommended best practices for CPA preparation and completion and licensure?
I can start. My biggest advice is don't do what I did. Get it done early, start while you are still in school, while you still have time. Once you get out into the real world, it becomes a little bit more challenging. And be diligent with it. Don't make excuses for it. It's like I said, once you get out into the field, it becomes a little bit more difficult because, you know, as tax accountants, we're working busy seasons, and then the slower season comes around, and then you may, you know, get some time here and there, and then, oh, well, you know, vacation or this and that. So my biggest thing is do it early and do it while you can, especially while you're still in the school mode.
Great, thank you. Maybe somebody else.
Yeah, I got that advice that Mark just mentioned from an early stage. And I always thought like those is pretty intensely crazy to like do a master's program and CPA all at once. And I was also a TA and everything. But let me tell you, I'm watching many of my colleagues right now, like honestly not do it because we're working 70, 80 hours a week and there's literally just no time. So there's a huge difference when you're studying and you're in school mode versus when you're in work, and then you have to turn off the work switch and then go back into study mode. So by any means, if you can get it done somehow before you start work or even while you're doing an internship or whatever, you will be very, very much better off because it is just going to be a huge burden that you don't have to bear while working very long hours. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You're going to be working probably very, very long hours in busy season. And it is what it is. So yes, it is pretty important that you put, if that's what you want, I would definitely nip it in the butt. And it's not impossible because a lot of people that I know, including myself, were able to do it during the master's program. It just comes down to time management. You might have to sacrifice a little bit. Like maybe you won't get to go out with your friends that much, or you might look weird, going out with your friends and having to leave early and study. You have to say no a lot of the times, but I mean, I'd rather take sacrifice for a year to benefit for the rest of my life down the road. So.
Great. Thank you, Ari. Yeah, I can remember way back when, of course, I'm so old that we had to sit for all 4 parts of the CPA exam within the same week. And they were named differently and content was a little different, but I still tell students, you want to sit for the exam as soon as possible because I was a young professional in a Big 4 firm. And just as Ari mentioned, you're working long hours. My last busy season in public accounting, now granted I was on the audit side of the house then, was 70 to 80 hours a week, much like what Ari is explaining. And so it's very difficult to carve out study time because you're pretty much exhausted by the end of the workday. So as soon as you complete, perhaps if you're going through a graduate program, as soon as you complete some type of content, so for example, if you recently completed advanced Fed tax, then that'd be a good time to go ahead and subscribe to sit for the reg section of the exam. So you can be strategic about how you align your classes and then sitting for the various sections of the exam.
And actually what I did was I tested the waters first. I was actually very nervous. I was like, oh, I'm starting this new program. I don't know if I have what it takes. I'm very known for self-doubt. I'm sure many people will remember with my being in school with me, but I actually went through a semester first, tested the waters, saw that I could handle the workload in the Mtacs program, and then I started to study. So it's like, see how you do the first semester, just, get good grades, make sure you can get good grades. If it's really difficult for you, then you might have to readjust. But if you're getting, A's or high B's and stuff, and you're not in risk of failing and whatnot, I mean, you might need to allocate some of that time to some studying. So.
Great, thank you. And any final words of wisdom from our panelists?
Yeah.
No, you go ahead.
Go ahead, Jeremy, and then we'll come back to Rachel.
Yeah, I just piggyback off what Ari was saying. Yeah, in school I was in the Mtacs program, I was a TA, and I was also a leasing consultant, which I'm sure everyone's heard of, 112 Courtland Apartments, those crazy apartments on downtown campus. So, doing all that, and looking at that point in time, I thought I had no time. Like now, there's plenty of, I could at least, pass 2 before starting at Kpmg back in the day. So, and it's so much harder because once you start, you want to start, you want to do well, you must prefer wake up early if you like to wake up early and look at the news and do whatever that kind of stuff and get ahead and impress people rather than have to, study, which you can still do well and impress people. People still pass the exam while working and stuff, but it's just, it can save you your hair. Just kidding. No, it was choice. It was choice. But no, seriously, I think work will be much more enjoyable. So definitely, do what you can while you can. So yeah.
I just wanted to add that, if you are frustrated and the score, whenever you do start taking it, the score isn't what you want it to be. My first CPA exam I took, everybody says is the hardest one. It's financial. And it took me a couple of times to pass it. So I was, financial accounting by day and Mtacs by night. And it was really difficult. But don't give up, because I eventually passed it. And also, if you're kind of in a situation where you feel like you need to do one or the other, I know a lot of people graduated in the summer when I should have graduated. And I actually pushed back my graduate date to take my last 2 classes in the fall. And I took the last 3 CPA exams in the summer, and I solely focused on that because I knew that it was going to be easier for me to take those exams while I wasn't working, and instead go to school and work at the same time. That was much easier than trying to take those exams. So if you're in that type of situation, I recommend that's kind of a better way to go about it.
Great, thank you. And that's excellent advice that Rachel has suggested relative to her strategy. And one thing that I notice about our graduate students is that they often load themselves up too heavily with coursework, particularly those that have part or full-time jobs. And so usually the first class I talk about Aesop's fables, the tortoise and the hare. So it's not who is the fastest, it's whether or not you win the race. So, just be cognizant that, what is on your personal plate, as I call it, and that you may have to adjust that over time. And, you may find that you had great ideas of taking X number of classes your first semester in grad school, but then you had to pull back, and that's perfectly fine. So all of our programs, both the MPA and the Mtacs, allow you to do that. So in the essence of time, we're about 12:37. I know a few of our professionals have a hard and fast leave at 1 p.m. So I want to make sure that our participants have an opportunity to ask questions of our panelists, and then I can stay on the call until about 1:30 to answer any questions about the MPA or the Mtacs program. So I would like to open it up then to our participants to see if you have any specific questions. It doesn't have to be related to anything we've talked about so far, or it could be related to that. And so if you will just unmute yourself, that's probably the easiest way to do that, and go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, I have a question. How difficult will the Mtacs program be for someone who's only had like 1 internship?
And that's for you panelists, not for me.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
well, I'll speak from personal experience. I had no internships before I did the Mtacs program, and I was 2 or 3 years removed from my undergraduate degree, so I was completely out of school. So I think the way that the Mtacs program is structured, you have a lot of support. I had amazing professors, some that pushed me a lot harder than I, thought I could, but I don't think that you have to have an internship in order to be successful with the Mtacs program.
I would agree with that. I don't think you have to do an internship to be successful. But for me, I had done, I think, 2 internships, and it really helped to apply what we were learning to like client situations that I had seen. So I think it's a good thing to do, but everybody's got their own personal path. And so going straight from undergrad into the Mtacs program is not going to hold you back. It'll just be a little different.
Yeah, work and school, there's concepts that you need to understand in school that will be applied at work, but every firm, every company is going to have their own way of doing things, their processes, their internal controls, whatever you know, every company is specific. There's some overlapping, you know, there's some similarities, of course, but everything is, you know, when you get to work, everyone is expected, you know, that you're learning. And I think that's the same from the Mtacs perspective, is because you're a lot of this is new information as well. Of course, it'll be an advantage that you get to see some of these, like, you know, nuances at an early stage as opposed to your peers, but I don't think it's a deal breaker.
Great, thank you. So we've got a couple of questions from Jalen in the chat box. So the first, is this field union friendly? And I'll speak to that. So as far as I know, accounting is not unionized, although we are not in a union state here in Georgia, but that would be my general sense on that. And then this next question, I'm going to prompt a little bit and then hear from our panelists. So how well, and this is also from Jalen, so how well can one grow in this field? Is one likely to be promoted in this field? And so what I hear from our employer/recruiters relative to Mtacs hires is that our Mtacs students usually are promoted more quickly than their peer group, because the Mtacs program is a series of 10 tax courses, whereas students that complete a master's in accountancy with some type of tax concentration or track, they usually have a maximum of only 3 tax courses. So that's one side of the coin, but I'd like to hear from our panelists relative to what you've experienced in the workplace.
I can vouch to this. I think it's definitely a great field to be promoted quickly, and as long as you prove yourself. And also the CPA exam is your gold card. If you have that passed, you're definitely going to get promoted quicker. The Mtacs definitely makes things a lot easier. I felt like when I started working full-time, everything was clicking for me probably quicker than it might have clicked for some people, just because I had that background. And I did get promoted fairly quickly. I got promoted to senior accountant in a year. And I think that having my CPA and also doing the Mtacs program was the major contributing factors to that.
And I would just want to add, this is where the advocate does come in, that Lynn was referring to. I don't know if it was relatively quickly, but I've been promoted kind of on a consistent basis. But a big part of that was I recognized that there was a need for someone to kind of specialize in an area, and there weren't any seniors who had kind of really taken on, you know, some of these new topics. So once managers realized, like, okay, she's willing to, you know, put her foot into something that may not be what she was initially focusing on, but recognize it was a need for the firm, it became more of a, okay, she's willing to take accountability, so she has the traits and qualities that you need, because you can always learn the technical skills, but showing initiative, making sure you're sharing your plans and communicating with the people and leadership that you work with, I think will also help in your promotion and career path, because people need to know what you're trying to do and what your goals are, so they can know how to best support you.
I would say there's plenty of opportunity for advancement and growth in this career path. That's why I chose it, particularly in public accounting. In my experience in Big Four, where it's there's every year, a couple of years, you're getting so much experience that after every year, a couple of years, you're moving into a new role. So after 2 years of being on the staff side, you're now in a senior position where you're expected to coach the new hires and help develop them and advance their careers. And then, kind of the way I see it, every new role I get is I'm trying to train the person behind me to replace me. And if I'm doing a good job at that, then I'll move on to the next level. So, after 2 years as a staff, you move to a senior role, and typically you'll spend 3 years in a senior role before you move on to a manager role. And then, after a couple more years as manager, you continue to move on and progress. And there's tremendous opportunities along the way.
Anybody else?
Okay,
I'm gonna.
sorry, Kim. Go ahead.
Okay, so Kim, Mark, and Miyoko. Yeah.
Okay. That's so funny. I will just say that my team, the federal tax team at UPS, had not ever hired an intern before they hired me in a full-time position, and I totally attribute that to the program that I was going through, to the Mtacs program at the same time, because it just really gave me such an advantage in in the knowledge that I was able to bring in every day and try to incorporate into what I was doing, So yeah, I think that that it created a special opportunity for me there. So.
Advancement is huge, and especially one of our partners in our tax group was in the Mtacs, started off as an intern, and within 10 years is now a partner. So it's absolutely possible, and it just depends on your goals, your work ethic, and your career path.
Hello.
So Miyoko, did you have something to
Yes.
add? Go ahead.
I just quickly wanted to add something. This the tax field has been changing. The trend is all the possible processes are now getting automated, and the technology side of it is it's very rapidly changing, and that's what I felt when I was working at Kpmg. I learned how to use Tableau at your class, Lane's class, and that really helped me as one of the strengths that I have besides the technical tax knowledge and skills. And I also used a lot of different tax software as well. And so that's I know it's some of them are really good at those technology, but my advice is to be flexible, to get used to technology and what's the line of the technology can do, and what people can do to bring the value to the company. And if you think that constantly in a daily work, and it's not only at workplace, but while you're studying, just the sense of how can tax professional add that value to the business and the companies? That mind is definitely strong, I think, to get you moved to the next level.
Great, thank you. And that reminds me, I haven't spoken to this, but I'll do it after the 1 p.m. cutoff. But we have added a tax analytics standalone course to the Mtacs program. And again, I'll talk about content at 1 o'clock. So we still have some additional questions in the chat box. I'm going to take care of one that I think will be a quick answer, because I don't think, are any of the panelists enrolled agents? Okay, yeah, I didn't think so. I think most people go the CPA route out of the Mtacs program. Okay, and then we have a question about what is basically the content of an internship experience. So we'll have one person speak to that, and then another person maybe speak about work-life balance, how that's changed in the work from home situation during COVID. And then another person maybe to talk about busy seasons related to the various subdisciplines, as it were, in taxation. So whether it's state and local, international, so on and so forth.
I thought I'd speak to the internship. As far as before, I had my internship, I thought that I'd be getting coffee, doing those kinds of things, making copies. No, not at all. As an intern, I did nothing different than when I became a staff. It's the exact same role. It's the exact same work. I like to joke, the only thing that changed when I went from an intern at my firm to full-time staff is that I got a nameplate and some business cards. So there was really no difference. I was still doing the same thing. For me, it was, compliance work, and I'm a little bit more of a generalist. So it's every type of tax return there is, basically, with a little bit of states mixed in. But yeah, that was one thing that I did not know of going into my internship of what I would be doing. And that's how it was handled.
Great, thank you. And so maybe one person on the work-life balance vis-a-vis work from home.
Yeah, I think the work-life balance, I feel like I kind of work a little more because, I mean, you got to factor in, like, usually you might wake up early, travel to the office, and then when you're leaving, that travel time basically is your work time. You don't have to have a coffee maker here. So I wake up, make coffee, right at my computer, So I feel like, and definitely, I think I'll get a better gauge on it, like, once busy season passes, like what it's actually like. But I feel like busy season has just been a tad more busy because, factoring in that to and from travel time.
Great, thank you, Jeremy. And then so maybe one person talk about the various busy seasons as it relates to your specialty area in tax.
I can talk about international compared to what I used to experience in being a generalist, where in general tax or Fed tax, you have these big peaks, 4/15 and then October 15th are the two biggest ones, and you're working like 60 to 80 hour weeks, some people like 100 billable hours. Once you go into specialty, it kind of shifts. I think probably state and local, you'd still be following that same pattern because it's very compliance focused. But if you're in like state and local consulting, or if you're in international tax, things kind of, there's less peaks, but you're busier throughout the year. So 40 hours billable in the summer is not unheard of for me, or 50 if I get put on some kind of planning project. But the exchange is that I don't ever have to work 80 billable hour weeks anymore, which is nice. I don't know if anybody else does.
Yeah, that sounds like a good trade-off, Michael. Yeah. Okay, maybe one other person to speak about busy season.
I'll just give the perspective from industry and working in tax accounting. Our busy season is the beginning of the year because it's all about getting the tax provision, getting everything finalized for the 10K to file with the SEC. So it's like January is the only time of year, but in January I work about 80 hours a week. But the rest of the year it's pretty relaxed because we have one consolidated return that we're filing, and we spend a lot of time working on that, but mostly my work is on provision at the quarters, so it gets a little busy at the quarters, but year end is the worst.
My time in industry was the worst busy season I've ever had.
Year end, yeah.
And I was like,
yeah.
You know what? I don't need.
Yeah, we work straight through the weekends. We just don't, until we have the numbers final to give to external reporting, we don't stop working.
These stories sound familiar. Definitely. Okay, so I'm not seeing any additional questions in the, oh, wait, let's see. Yes, we do have a question. Thank you. So this comes from Renee. And she's worked in multiple tax departments, sales and use tax compliance. Software not up to par with current tax technology. It puts strain on work-life balance. How would you advise growth in this type of work environment?
I guess I'll give it a shot. I think I know I've interviewed with like a few like industry firms before in the past, and they kind of mentioned how some of their technology and stuff may not have been the same as what I had when I was at PwC. And so I think and from that they were saying that's kind of like a process to be able to like bring in what some of the technology that is using Big Four. And so I think if you can like kind of maybe find out what they are using and be able to like be able to create, I think what they say, like a business reason or whatever, and be able to like show what it could do or the hours they could save, money they could save. I think that's a way. So like, for example, like, one big thing that's kind of being used is, in addition to like Tableau, is kind of like Alteryx and stuff. So how you can automate a lot of, some of the bots, like UiPath, how you can automate some of that stuff. But it's kind of hard because like if you are currently at a company that you haven't even seen it, I'm not even sure if I was in that position how I would, because you can't just like Google. Well, you probably can like Google like what technology before, or tax accounting, stuff is out there. But yeah, kind of figure out what that is, and then maybe reaching out to people and seeing how who work at those companies or whatever, how they use it, or not even sure if that's allowed. But yeah, just trying to figure out that business reason. So
Right. Great. Thank you, Jeremy. And I can speak to that a little more at the 1 o'clock hour, but we've got a couple more questions in the chat box. So we have one student that's participating today that's career transitioning. Not so much accounting career, but leadership experience, and is inquiring whether your advice would be to take time to begin prep for the CPA exam or to continue looking for accounting work experience. So that's the first question.
I will say that I love hiring people who are transitioning. That's like my favorite person to hire, who has all of the experience of managing their own time. That's the most important thing, I think, in public accounting at least, and probably industry as well, is knowing how to manage your own time and be professional. And so usually if somebody's coming from a different career, they've already got those things knocked out. So, I mean, my advice is just, you got to be humble. You're going to be working under people that are a lot younger than you, and that's, it's just the way it goes if you're doing it. But you should, rise faster. I would get the CPA done while you have time. Everybody talked about their horror stories earlier. Doing the CPA while you're working is just awful. I did that. So I would focus, if you have the time right now, be trying to get the CPA exam done, because then you have that behind you.
Great. And that was a perfect segue to the next question that's in the chat box about how important it is to have a CPA and how that impacts progression in the workplace. And so I know most of the big four, you cannot be promoted. I think it's to the manager level without the licensure. But I certainly want to open that up for feedback from our panelists.
Yeah, at Fraser and Dieter, you can't get promoted to manager unless you're a CPA. But outside of that, even if you think about it from a client engagement perspective, like you can't be on power of attorneys. And so even as a senior, if you're reviewing work or trying to show your partners and managers that you can step up and are able to, handle an engagement and client contact, you're kind of putting yourself at a disadvantage, because you can't pick up the phone and call the IRS. You'll have to go to the partner and say, hey, can you sit on hold for 2 hours and call the IRS for me? Because, so just thinking about it from a client engagement standpoint, while you can't get promoted to manager, even as a senior, I think it'll be very challenging to really be as effective and kind of showcase your skills and your management, client engagement and management without the CPA.
Great, thank you. Anybody else?
I would just get it done as soon as possible. I've seen folks that are amazingly talented in our career in the Big Four, 7, 8 years down the road, still haven't got the CPA. Should definitely be a manager, but they're still doing, still technically a senior, even though they're doing manager responsibilities. So definitely just get that done as soon as you can.
Okay, and so then we had a question about how significant is grad school versus getting CPA without grad school. So you're eligible to sit for the CPA exam in Georgia with 120 credit hours. So generally an undergrad accounting degree gives you eligibility to sit for the exam. However, you need 150 total hours for licensure. So you're going to have to do something, and it depends on each state. So NASBA, NASBA, National Association of State Boards of Accountancy.org. They have all the various state requirements. So Georgia is not accounting specific, but meaning you could take graduate classes and other disciplines. But I think it would behoove you to stick with accounting because that's going to increase your chances of passing the exam. And the exam format changes beginning January 2024. So I'm going to make a note to myself. I'll speak about that at the 1 p.m. and we're there. So let's see, there's an adequate amount of time to study and prepare for the CPA exam. So maybe one or two panelists speak about how much time you devoted on a weekly basis for CPA prep.
When I was starting, your regiment might change throughout the process. Everyone is, I feel like a lot of my friends are concerned. They ask me like, hey, what did you do? What did you do? I said, I did a few things. I started one way and I definitely ended it another. Every section is different. Some may come easier to you than others. And first, I was like, I think if I were to all compile it together, I think you should have short-term goals, daily goals. Say to yourself, if you're using Becker, I think they do it in modules. At a bare minimum, I'm going to do 2 modules a day. If it's like a big module, it's just going to be 1. But like you have to have some short-term goals, because if I don't think you should have no strategy and just wing it. I think, there's some that are successful at doing it, and great to them, they're whizzes. I have friends who passed in 3 months, that wasn't me. For me, I just wanted to make sure I was at least on track somehow. And I did that via short-term goals. Every week, 1 or 2 months. I didn't do it in hours. Sometimes maybe I studied for 8 hours that day if I had nothing to do. Maybe the next day I did only a few because I had an exam coming up. But you don't get so stuck up in like, oh, I have to have a set in stone schedule. It has to have, every day is going to be exactly to the T. Take it in stride and adjust accordingly when you find things are not working. That's pretty much my advice.
Great. Anybody else?
Yeah, sorry, Rachel, go ahead.
You go ahead, Jeremy.
Well, I was going to say, just piggyback on what Ari said, yeah, don't like say, this day, every day I'm going to spend like at least 3 hours or 4 hours. And if I do this to this, I'm going to pass, but some stuff might come too easy to you. Some stuff may not. And so it might require a little more time. So you don't want to set yourself up like disappointments, on the prep side, but that was it.
Okay, great. Rachel.
I was just going to say, time-wise, you don't want to spend too much time on an exam. Once you start spending too much time on studying, you're going to start forgetting the stuff that you learned in the beginning. And I definitely struggled with that at first. So when you are studying, I would say don't give yourself more than 2 months to study for an exam, because after that, you really start to forget. And if I was to do it differently, I wouldn't have spent so much time trying to be such a perfectionist on an exam, and I probably would have passed faster.
Yeah, so as I say, if you make more than a 75, you study too hard, because that's a minimum score, and it's sufficient. It makes you a CPA. So unless you're really shooting for the over 90, because some firms offer monetary incentives if you make a certain score, but otherwise 75 is sufficient. So don't study too hard. And then I'm not ignoring the finance versus Mtacs question, but while we're on CPA exam, so Al has a question. I think, Al, the consensus of the panelists is that, yes, you can start your job without having the CPA exam, but you may find that because of time constraints, it's more difficult to study and complete the CPA exam. So what I'm hearing as a group consensus is to try and complete the CPA exam, or as many parts, maybe not the whole thing, but as many parts as you can prior to beginning your employment. Okay, and then we have a question from someone who's an undergrad finance major inquiring whether or not I think I know who this is. It's a student in one of my classes, so I think I have the gender correct. He should consider an accounting degree or go straight into the Mtacs. So for any of the panelists maybe that did not have an undergrad in accounting and went into the Mtacs. So Michael, you might be the closest because I don't think Tech has an undergrad accounting major.
So doing the Mtacs versus not doing it, I think my opinion on that has shifted over the years. Well, I got the Mtacs just to get the credit hours. I needed that. Georgia Tech didn't have what you needed to sit for the CPA exam, and the firm was sponsoring it. So I was like, why not? You know, not a lot of firms are sponsoring them anymore. But I thought it was just like getting a piece of paper at the time. I didn't think that it was really worth it. And I see a lot of employers like for hiring coming in. I don't see people distinguishing that much between Mtacs and Masters of Accountancy. But now, about 10 years removed from getting my Mtacs, I'm so glad I got it. Like the things that you learn, the fundamentals, the way to approach tax, like I've advanced far further than I would have if I didn't get the Mtacs. I think it just gives you the capability to do more intense research and analysis and tackle greater challenges than if you didn't get the master's. So more for a personal benefit. I mean, if you're just looking for the shortest path to getting hired, you could get the CPA exam without having the master's, but for your own benefit and for the long-term benefits, I would say a master's, and specific, if you're getting into tax, get the Mtac.
I can quickly speak also. I actually did get a finance and an accounting degree. The accounting degree definitely helped, but going into the Mtacs, I don't know that I would go get another account if I didn't have the accounting degree. I think I was fully suited and fully prepared for it. And definitely the accounting degree definitely helped in my career, the debits and the credits and the financial accounting and those kinds of things. But personally, I think especially Georgia State's finance department is fantastic and really gets you ready for the Mtacs.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'll take just a moment to talk about how the CPA exam format is going to change beginning January 2024, and this has already been approved by AICPA and NASBA. And so it's based on an engineering model. So there are multiple types of engineers: civil, electrical, etc. And so it has to do with their certification exam, and that's the genesis for the change. And there's going to be a core exam. So if you want to envision this, it's a concentric circle situation. So in the core is what we've traditionally tested for the CPA exam, which would include financial audit, tax, systems, and then some general business concepts. But then you will be required to choose a certification in one of three areas. And one of the certifications will be taxation. So as far as the Mtacs is concerned, it can serve you well in two veins. So contingent upon where you are. So if you're about to enter graduate school or you're one of our newly admitted Mtacs students, having that Mtacs degree is going to put you on a level playing field with those that come behind you and have this separate tax certification. And then for students that are undergrads and aren't quite there yet, completing the Mtacs degree, if you plan to be a tax professional, that will definitely position you well for that tax certification. And then the other thing that we're hearing from AICPA is that if you choose a certification area and then decide to change your career trajectory thereafter, then that's okay. So you aren't locked in if initially you choose taxation or one of the other two as your specialty areas. So you do have some wiggle room down the road, but in preparation for the exam and or to be competitive with those that are coming shortly behind you, I think Mtacs is an excellent way to position yourself. Okay, and then we have another question in the chat box about whether your firm is more cloud and technology based versus old school paper trail. And my intuition is the former rather than the latter, but again, I'll defer to our panelists. So maybe if we'll hear from a couple of people regarding that.
As far as Deloitte, we definitely leverage technology to the fullest extent. Even in comparison to the middle market firm, Grant Thornton, that I used to work at, I was an intern at, I saw like a very stark difference in technology. You know, one firm is bigger than the other, but even though the firm emphasizes technology, you will always have specific groups and within a specific group and within a specific engagement, just because the partner, you know, for all these years, they always printed out everything and review and whatever. You cannot combat that. That is just a very specific problem. And I label it as like a problem. Maybe some others don't. You know, some people are paper people, some people are not. I am an electronic ebook kind of person. I cannot stand paper. But you're not going to be able to do anything about it. Like if the partner wants you to print 50 pages to review the work paper and the whole Excel workbook, then you know, it is what it is. But I think, you know, overall, there's like a huge emphasis on technology because things are getting way more complex. You know, you have all these partnerships with like 2,000 partners in it. How are you going to issue K1s? Well, you're not going to do it one by one. You know, we have K1 income allocation tools and stuff to do it all at once. And even though we have all these tools, it's still complex and it still takes a lot of time to understand the software and work through it. But I mean, I can't imagine like 10 years from now, that's probably going to be antiquated. That's not, it's going to be like, wow, you had to like go in and upload and import and then it spit out K1s. Like, how is it not already tied to the client's financials, like in real time? And which I'm pretty sure we're making our way through that too. We're just going to be more of there's not going to be a preparer anymore. It's just going to be a reviewer. Because it's, you know, everything is getting much more complex these days. So
great, thank you. Maybe one more panelist that might want to add to that.
I feel like as a whole, even at a smaller firm like mine, which has, you know, maybe 20 to 25 people in the tax department, we're fully integrated. We had one senior manager that came in for a little while, like Ari said, that wanted to print everything and it was painstaking. But no, everything has become cloud-based. Even our tax preparation software that used to be housed in the office is now cloud-based. So I feel like most of the industry is moving towards that cloud-based.
Great. Thank you, Mark. So I'll take that as my opportunity to segue and talk about technology in the Mtacs curriculum. So the faculty and I approved the addition, it's a required course for tax analytics. It's offered in your last semester of the program. So you take that the second fall that you're in the program. It's essential because as you're hearing from each of the panelists, everything is technology driven now. So employers are looking for a different type of student to hire, and you have to have some type of acumen related to technology if you want to place well coming out of a program. And so I'm in the process of working with an instructional designer right now, developing that class. And I'm also meeting with professionals, usually at the senior manager or higher level within the Big Four and some of the global 6 firms. And each organization has a different philosophy. So some organizations still are a bit siloed, as I would characterize it. So you have your data scientist, they're doing programming, maybe in Python or R. And then you have your tax professionals who are using other tools like Tableau, Alteryx, UiPath for robotic process automation, and that kind of thing. And in that situation, my perception is that it's not that much different than it used to be way back when I was in corporate. and I was running special projects, and I would go to a meeting with IT professionals, and we'd get within an inch of each other in the discussion, and then it fell apart. So we understood each other until we got that close, and then it just dissipated. And then other organizations are using a more holistic approach. So in a client-facing manner, it's the entire team that interacts with the clients. In that particular organization, its preference is that the accountants also have this technology skill set. So right now, the first iteration of the tax analytics, you'll definitely use Tableau, you'll definitely use Alteryx, and you'll definitely use iPath or some other RPA software. And in fact, leading up to that capstone course, you're already getting exposure to Tableau in the first semester. You get exposure to Access databases in the first semester. And as you run Access database queries, the backdrop on that is SQL, aka SQL. So I'm probably going to add a little bit of SQL coding in the tax analytics program as well. And then another thing that I hope that we get done is that we insert Alteryx in one of the other required courses prior to the tax analytics class. And that ensures that you've already used some subset of the tool so that you can really start answering tax questions and making projections in that capstone course, as opposed to just learning the tools. And then we have a resident expert in our CIS department who is an SAP programmer, expert, over 20 years industry and or higher ed experience with that. We have what's known as SAP UA, University Alliance. So if you're not familiar with SAP, it's an ERP system. And we're going to have some emphasis about that in the tax analytics course. I'm hearing that from the professionals, that the tax accountants need to understand where the data is in the ERP systems. And I'm not versed in, because I'm the one that'll be teaching the class, I'm not versed very well as far as artificial intelligence. But I do know, based on popular press, that AI is becoming more and more sophisticated. So until now, the mantra has been that, well, technology can do so much, but we still need judgment from our professionals. But as AI technology continues to improve, then the technology will be able to make some decisions that you and I historically have been making. So you're going to need some type of technology acumen so that you can function, I think, within the workspace. So those are some of the plans that we have for the tax analytics course, at least for that first iteration. And I'm sure it will continue to evolve. But I would just ask that the panelists chime in. Maybe you've used Alteryx at your firm already, or if there are other tools that you're using. So each of the tools that I've mentioned, there are competitor products. One reason we're using these is because they're free to academics and students. But the thing about programming or using some type of technology is what we refer to as syntax. So each tool has its language. Once you learn it with one tool, it's easy to augment and transition to a different. So many of the firms that I'm speaking with say they're tool agnostic, because what drives the tool that their professionals use is what the client is using. So again, I'll just open it up for some feedback from some of our panelists.
I can speak to that. I've recently taken the mantle of head of technology for global tax services for Crow, and we're pushing hard in this space. I think Alteryx definitely, the RPAs, it's really interesting, but we're not seeing it a lot right now. I mean, it's more for like automating things that you would do over and over again. So if you have something, you know, that you have to go in and click a button like 1,000 times a year, then you can automate that. But I mean, I think it's great that you're putting this program together, and that tax professionals are going to have exposure to this. Don't feel like you need to know how to program in Python, or you need to be able to like write a SQL program. Just knowing what the possibilities are will help you identify in your firm, like, hey, why am I spending 100 hours a year doing this? We could automate this. And then you bring in the people who know how to, like the data scientists, the actual people who went to computer science school. I tried that for like 2 semesters. Didn't work out for me. Tax is way better. But it's definitely something I think it will give you a huge leg up if you have experience with while you're in school. To learn about that so that you can identify opportunities once you get out. And like Lynn said, it is all about what the clients are using with, and Alteryx is doing a great job of infiltrating the Fortune 500. So they're using that. They want their professionals to be able to use that and want people to be able to identify opportunities for using RPAs.
Yeah, I used Alteryx pretty constantly daily when I was with Kpmg, and Alteryx was just started to sort of getting popular in the tax field at that time. And but for me, it was very new, but I saw a lot of potential to get things automated and then being work efficiently. And I thought, I wish, this program that you're putting together right now is great. I think I like to even take it, and it's very different, even though even though you don't use you don't completely understand the Alteryx, but you exposed to it before you start working, and that will give you a sense of, okay, what can be done within the Alteryx and what cannot. And that sense is very important going forward at any places. And UPS is not yet there. They are still kind of hesitating to start using because licensing for the Alteryx is very expensive. So I personally want to know more about it, and then sort of like a lead of start using within the company. Yeah, this is I think it's very important skills to know in the tax field for sure.
Great, thank you. Excuse me. And yeah, another thing I happened to think about. So it's one of Miyoko's colleagues at UPS. He is teaching our accounting for income taxes course in the Mtacs program. And so Aaron uses OneSource tax provision at UPS. And we are currently trying to secure funding so that we can actually use the software in the class. And the software provider has a certification program and can offer a deep discount for students to complete the certification while they're enrolled in our course. So if that comes to fruition, you're going to get exposure to another tax tool and be eligible for that certification at a deeply discounted rate. So I think that the ballpark estimate was $75 for the student. And if you took that certification exam as a professional, it's upwards of $400. So that's a huge savings. And the other thing that it does is that it builds your resume. So my objective as program director is to best position you as a tax professional as you exit the program. And so I'm always open to hearing from our alums about what's happening in their workplace to make sure that we are current and that we remain relevant to the profession. Okay, so we're getting close to 1:30 and I need to do a hard exit at 1:30 because I have a 2 p.m. class today. But I just wanted to open up to see if our participants have any additional questions for our panelists. They've been very generous for their time, but I only asked them to commit until 1:15. So thank you all for those of you for those that have stayed on the call. So any remaining questions from our participants?
I got one. May I speak?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Al.
Okay, for the panelists, I was wondering, so during your time in both your undergraduate or graduate studies, how exactly were courses and gradings affected you both mentally and physically to help motivate you going forward towards your careers? Like, how did it affect you? And
Okay, so maybe one or two panelists to respond.
I'll go. To be honest, the undergraduate, like I think I was still too close out of high school for undergraduate for me to kind of, I mean, I got good grades, but I didn't think that it would really hinder my success. But with the Mtacs program, because I knew that that was really my profession and something that I really wanted to build my career on, I did kind of focus a lot. And again, I communicated Lucia Smith. I still talk to her today, and was one of the reasons why I researched so well. So I think while I did have some challenging times because I was pregnant again, I did have some challenging times, but building the connection with your professors can also help with some of the mental, constraints that you may face during your undergraduate and graduate careers. It's just communicating and letting people know what's going on, and they're human, they're people, and they'll work with you as long as you communicate.
That's excellent advice. So as I tell students, don't wait until the end of the semester to tell me that you have XYZ situation, because I can't help you then. And I think all of our accounting faculty are more than willing to help students, but communication is essential. And you need to learn how to do that now, because that will be expected when you are in the workforce. Anybody else from the panel?
I'll touch on it really quick. I think not only having people communicating with people at school is important, but also communicating with people in your personal life is also very important, and to have positive people around you that are rooting for you. It makes things really difficult if you have people behind you that aren't supporting you because, they don't understand that your time is so sensitive and just stuff like that. So just having those people, those positive people in your life can help your mental so much. And I feel like making the decision of having positive people in your life, and for me personally, I feel like helped me so much if I was going through things, because I was very passionate about my grades. And if a grade isn't where you want it to be, it can be hard, but just having people to be able to talk to and vent to about it is, I think, probably the most helpful thing it was for me.
Great, that's excellent advice, Rachel. So we have one more question in the chat box from Renee regarding a follow-up tax form in the future. So historically, what we've done is in the spring semester, when we've been able to meet face-to-face, we've had the alumni panel that precedes a tax-only Meet the Firms event. But this year, we decided to separate those two events. So we're holding the panel now. And then in fall, it will be after the October 15th deadline. So late October, the specific date is to be determined, but we will have a tax-only Meet the Firms event. So make sure you stay in touch with our Career Advancement Center because we have multiple career fairs and Meet the Firms events in the fall. It's extremely busy, and so the more you can go to that, even though maybe your heart's set on being a tax professional right now, I just encourage you to go to all events because it's so important to network. And you don't want to meet the person for the first time when you're looking for the job. So you want to have attended multiple of these events, if at all possible, so that you've built some type of connection or rapport with the professionals or a particular organization. And then at the juncture that you're ready to secure employment, you're not talking to a stranger. So I can't emphasize enough the importance of learning to network sooner rather than later. So we are at 1:29. I think we're going to wrap things up. So Ms. Thomas, I will let you stop the recording as soon as we're done. And then if you have any comments on behalf of Career Advancement Center. So again, I want to thank our panelists. All of your time is extremely valuable. I know that. So I greatly appreciate the time that you spent with us today. And for the participants, thank you for being here. I'm seeing in the chat box that most of you think that it's been helpful. And that was our goal. So I'm glad that we met that objective. And so at this juncture, Ms. Thomas, do you have anything that you'd like to say on behalf of Career Advancement Center?